first, phony victims who inflict real pain. That's the focus of tonight's Angle. When the Jussie Smollett story first broke, many in the media seemed positively giddy. They were thrilled to push the story that MAGA-headed thugs attacked a black, gay, liberal actor, all in the name of Donald J. Trump.
Now to that attack on a star of the TV show Empire, Jussie Smollett.
Actor and musician Jussie Smollett from the hit show Empire was attacked and beaten early this morning in Chicago.
A Hollywood star who's black and gay, and now the victim of a heinous crime.
Yeah, I did the racial slurs and maybe even some of the homophobic slurs being used toward him. You can see how serious this crime is right now.
Absolutely despicable. And this is America in 2018.
Only as the Chicago Police Department investigated Smollett's story, none of it added up. Now police sources are telling various networks that Smollett himself choreographed the attack, paying a pair of Nigerian brothers to carry it out, even giving them money to buy rope at a local hardware store to make the noose. The trio even rehearsed the encounter in advance. Yet just last week, the Empire actor was afforded a friendly platform on GMA to shop and defend his anti-Trump script.
I can only go off of their words. I mean, who says Empire, this MAGA country?
Why do you think you were targeted?
I can just assume, I mean, I come really, really hard against 45. I come really, really hard against his administration. And I don't hold my tongue.
And the Oscar goes to, well, but eventually those stubborn things called facts got in the way. And suddenly CNN's Brian Stetler and others are now doing the backstroke.
There was a rush to judgment. I think it was mostly in the celebrity press and among activists and among Twitter people. I think it was a really careful reporting by news organizations.
If it turns out that Smollett did indeed orchestrated this attack, paid the attackers, then he's done infinitely more damage to the African-American community, people of color.
Yeah, there's a lot to be concerned about here. So let's start with the fact that we don't have all the facts yet. We should get them. I think one thing we've learned from how this story is unfolded is let's wait and see.
Oh, finally! Let's wait and see. Well, some journalists seem to fall into a state of absolute mourning. In the words of the AP's Lindsay Barr, the outrage has now been replaced by surprise, doubt, and bafflement as the singers, actors, and politicians who came out to support the Empire star struggle to digest the strange twist that the case has taken. Some conservative pundits, meanwhile, have gleefully seized on the moment. No, Lindsay, you're wrong. It was the left, the political, media, and Hollywood establishment that seized on the moment because this Smollett tall tale advanced their anti-Trump zealotry. Now we're learning just the inverse is true. Media and political heavyweights were once again willing to slander innocent people, an entire class of people, in a desperate attempt to justify their hatred of Donald Trump. The Democratic 2020 frontrunners tripped over themselves to fan the flames of the Smollett attack. Cory Booker and Kamala Harris called it, quote, a modern-day lynching and urged anti-lynching legislation in response to the attack. Well, on Sunday, Booker suddenly took a more sober, careful approach, saying he wouldn't further address the matter, quote, until all information actually comes out. How convenient. If only he had exercised such caution when the story first broke. Of course, he tried to get off the defensive really fast, though, contending at a town hall that
we know in America that bigoted and biased attacks are on the rise in a serious way. We actually even know in this country that since 9/11, the majority of the terrorist attacks on our soil have been right-wing terrorist attacks.
Oh, the man has absolutely zero shame. Ditto for Kamala Harris.
Which tweet? What tweet?
About saying that it is a modern-day lynching that...
Sorry.
Yes, Jussie Smollett.
Okay, so I will say this about that case. I think that the facts are still unfolding, and I'm very concerned about, obviously, the initial allegation that he made about what might have happened.
I like how she does this and then laughs. It's really funny. Not. Well, of course, the dim bulbs in the entertainment industry were also eager to advance the MAGA lynching story, taking Smollett at his word, despite circumstances that, let's face it, were really fishy from the outset. Canadian actress Ellen Page made the pilgrimage to Colbert, where she made the mistake of delivering her own lines.
The Vice President of America wishes I didn't have the love with my wife. Connect the dots. This is what happens. If you are in a position of power and you hate people and you want to cause suffering to them, you go through the trouble. You spend your career trying to cause suffering. What do you think is going to happen? And people are going to be beaten on the street.
Well, this is a classic example of wish fulfillment syndrome. When you want something so desperately that you're able to ignore the obvious warning signs. Now think about it this way. The left has staked so much of their own identity and credibility on the plot line that Trump is a really bad man, that they need him to be a really bad man. One who inspires vitriol and violence like the sort that the Empire actor alleged. Now, Smollett himself is rapidly anti-Trump, and speculation is swirling that he orchestrated the faux attack to propel himself to some type of hero status in Hollywood. In other words, kind of think of it the new superhero, Jussie, the MAGA Slayer. Well, the same rush to judgment, though, happened recently with the Covington Catholic high school boys, when allegations became liberal gospel. The white kids in the red hats may as well have been wearing white hoods. Like Kavanaugh accusers Christine Blasey Ford and Julie Swetnick before him, Smollett was allowed to dominate a news cycle because his allegations ultimately reflected badly on President Trump, or so he hoped. But where's the justice when the social justice warriors are actually the ones purveying fraud, hatred, and poison? Nick Sandman, that Covington Catholic kid, is right to sue everyone who accused him of racism, and I hope he wins big. Brett Kavanaugh had his life turned upside down in the most humiliating way, and we're still waiting for the DOJ prosecution of Swetnick and Avenatti. And meanwhile, Blasey Ford herself collected over $800,000 through a GoFundMe account, supposedly applied to cover her security costs. And as for that Feinstein staffer who likely leaked her original letter, we're still waiting on the Senate Judiciary Committee's findings there. But the fact is, most of the left-wing false accusers operate with impunity because conservatives usually choose to just move on. That's a huge mistake. If these phonies like Smollett aren't made to pay for their defamatory tall tales, we'll just see more of it as 2020 approaches. Even the man who's in the false narrative Hall of Fame seems to kind of agree.
If it is found that Smollett and these gentlemen did in some way perpetrate something that is not true, they ought to face accountability to the maximum. But let's not act like this is some left-wing hoax that some are saying on social media.
Oh, no, it's not a left-wing hoax at all, Al. Okay. Well, what is it then? Well, speaking of frauds, maybe Andrew McCabe can argue that the president himself hired Smollett and the Nigerians at the behest of the Russians to carry out the whole thing. Hey, they might as well try to bring all these fraudulent storylines together. Think about how much fun that'll be. And that's The Angle.
We do start tonight with the very latest on Empire actor Jussie Smollett. He claimed that two late-night pro-Trump racists tied a noose around his neck, doused him in a chemical, all while shouting racist and homophobic slurs. But now the actor has lawyered up. He's now refusing to meet with police, as multiple outlets now reporting that Smollett paid two acquaintances to stage the alleged assault, and they even rehearsed it. Those two men are now reportedly cooperating with investigators, and Smollett, he appears to be in big, big trouble. Now, in the state of Illinois, filing a false police report, that's a felony, punishable by up to 3 years in prison. And remember, the threatening, racist letter filled with white substance, if there's any chance that Smollett received that prior to the attack, that there are reports, maybe the FBI is investigating if he might have been involved in that. If that happened, if he's responsible, well, he could also face federal felony charges. Joining us now with the very latest on the Smollett case, Fox 32 reporter Raffer Weigel is with us. Raffer, good to see you. You have been in the forefront of breaking a lot of these stories, skeptical at first, unlike a lot of the national media, and I got to give you a lot of credit for that because there's been some horrific reporting in this case.
But no, you're absolutely right. Very early on with this case, Sean, I was very skeptical because Chicago police were skeptical. You know, we were very careful at Fox 32 News to report that Jussie Smollett says he was attacked because we weren't there. We don't know if he was attacked. And, you know, normally I defend my profession, but yes, the national media that ran with the headline, Jussie Smollett was attacked, that's journalism 101. I mean, it's the old adage, if your mother says she loves you, check it out. Police also told me that they were very skeptical given the nature of this, the red hats, the bleach, the rope, and the location in Streeterville. I voiced that skepticism publicly on Twitter. I did get some backlash, and now it appears that there might be some merit to that skepticism. As for the very latest on the case right now, the very latest is this is the big news now. State's Attorney Kim Foxx, a Democrat, announcing that she has recused herself from this case. I can tell you that this blindsided Chicago police. She just released a statement a moment ago basically saying that out of impartiality, that there could have been, that they had, let me get this right here, that they wanted to address questions of impartiality based upon familiarity with potential witnesses in this case. So this means that Assistant State's Attorney Joseph Maggots is taking over the case. Today, the two Nigerian brothers went before police and prosecutors at 26th and Cal, the Cook County Courthouse. They were completely brought in total secrecy. We had every single entrance and exit staked out. We did not see these guys go in and out. The last time somebody was afforded that kind of privilege with police and prosecutors was when Oprah Winfrey went there for jury duty. I did see their lawyer, Gloria Schmidt. She walked out of a doorway marked grand jury. I asked her, did her clients go before a grand jury? She simply said, I have no comment. Police then said, no, the men did not testify before a grand jury today, but they are cooperating with police, and they are right now trying to help the police build a case against Jussie Smollett. In the meantime, while all of this is going on, there is a separate investigation altogether. Mind you, the hate letter that was sent to the Empire Studios, that's being handled by the FBI and the U.S. Postal Service, the feds. We have no idea where that investigation stands. We've been getting some leaks out of Chicago PD, but that is a whole host of potential trouble for Smollett, because now you're looking at federal charges, possibly linked to terrorism, completely independent of what might happen with the Chicago PD's case against him.
Rayford, let me ask you a question here. The Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx's recusal, somebody sent me, and I don't know if you know the truth of this, and I'm asking, do you know that she has endorsed Kamala Harris? I'm excited she is running for president. I would not be where I am today without her guidance, etc. Is any of this have to do with politics, presidential politics?
Well, it could be politics, but it really could be something as simple as she knows Jussie Smollett. If she knows Kamala Harris, as you know, Smollett has campaigned with Harris. You know, Kim Foxx, it's no secret, has aspirations of higher office. And perhaps she didn't want to deal with any sort of political ramifications if she has to be the one to send Jussie Smollett to jail.
Maybe she just did the right
Ultimately,
thing.
I think
maybe she just saw a potential conflict and got out, which might be admirable.
And that's absolutely a possibility as well. Her assistant, Joseph Maggots, I do not know him personally, but I know that he's going to competently handle this case and try to prosecute Smollett to the full letter of the law if they find enough evidence for him to be guilty.
Almost 3,000 people were shot in the city of Chicago last year. Men, women, small children, sometimes alone, sometimes in groups. Many hundreds of them died. Not a single one of those people received anything like the attention the media have lavished on a relatively minor assault alleged by the television actor Jussie Smollett. On the other hand, none of Chicago's 3,000 shootings was even half as useful as Smollett's story. His story had everything. The national media long ago gave up the pretense of gathering news. Journalism is now explicitly a political job. The point of it is to enforce cultural orthodoxies and punish enemies. Jussie Smollett was the perfect vehicle for both of those things. Journalists pretended to be horrified as they recounted what he said happened to him, but secretly, they were thrilled.
There are many indications of a hate crime here. They are looking for two suspects who were apparently wearing Make America Great Again hats, though that has not yet been officially confirmed.
We don't know what happened to Jussie, but what we do know is that racism is alive and well in this country. There is real evidence of people who have done these crimes who cite that the president has inspired them.
The fact that it reportedly said this is MAGA country adds to sort of the atmosphere of menace that African Americans in particular and people of color in general have felt since the advent of the Trump administration.
And the media has really cast so much doubt on his story, which I find so personally offensive, that a gay black man is targeted and then suddenly he becomes the victim of people's disbelief. Why? It's so outrageous.
He said his attackers hurled racial and homophobic slurs at him. And this is America in 2019.
This is America in 2019. To the national media, Smollett's story was the perfect metaphor for the Trump era. It was also, pretty clearly, a total crock. Smollett's account began to fall apart within hours. After a series of leaks from the obviously skeptical Chicago Police Department, Smollett's handlers paired him with a network anchor they could rely on to launder the hoax. In the end, Smollett sat for 16.5 minutes with Robin Roberts of Good Morning America. Roberts surely knew there was ample evidence that Smollett was lying, but she decided to ignore that. Instead, Roberts colluded with him. She nodded empathetically as Smollett wept on camera. She asked no significant follow-up questions. The two parted like old friends. Both Smollett and Roberts turned out to be talented actors. Check out their performance on YouTube before it's scrubbed. You'll never watch ABC News again. Virtually every word they utter is dishonest. Smollett began by explaining that the men who attacked him were not muggers. They didn't want money. They assaulted him purely because of his identity as a gay black Democrat. People like Jussie Smollett aren't allowed to live in Donald Trump's America. That was the message of the attackers. This is MAGA country, they screamed. They were referring, of course, to Chicago, a city where 88% of the population voted against Donald Trump. As a crime story, it didn't make a lot of sense. And when skeptics on the internet raised basic questions about his story, Smollett attacked them as racist.
If I had said it was a Muslim or Mexican or someone black, I feel like the doubters would have supported me a lot more. And that says a lot about the place that we are in our country right now. The fact that we have these fear mongers, these people that are trying to separate us, and it's just not okay.
What you just heard is a near-perfect inversion of the truth. As Smollett himself might have put it, who exactly is the fear mongrel here? Who is dividing us? And who exactly is the victim in all of this? Well, Smollett claims that he's the victim. He tells us that he represents the most despised and unfashionable groups in America. That's why bigots doubt his story. The rest of us nod as if this were true, because we're required to do that. That's how dishonest our society has become. Everyone must lie all the time. We know the rules. We have no choice. Meanwhile, our leaders immediately jump to the defense of this supposedly unpopular person before even hearing the evidence. Within hours, at least 2 presidential candidates had described what happened to Smollett as a, quote, attempted lynching. They assumed on faith that he must be telling the truth. By definition, they smeared anyone who doubted him. They called him a hero. Is this the treatment that marginalized people receive? No, hardly. Smollett isn't powerless, far from it. His power lies in pretending that he has no power. In fact, Jussie Smollett and his promoters are the aggressors in this story. They launched a calculated campaign of slander against an entire group of people who have far less wealth and far less cultural influence than they have. If there's a bias crime here, they committed it. Will anyone be held accountable for this? Don't bet on it. In 1987, Al Sharpton introduced the media to a young woman called Tawana Brawley. Brawley had an awful story to tell. She said she'd been viciously raped by a group of racist white men and left in a garbage bag. She was covered in feces with racial slurs scrawled on her body. The Brawley case dominated headlines across the country for more than a year, and it bitterly divided New York City along ethnic lines. People hated each other because of what Tawana Brawley said happened to her. But it was all a lie. After conducting hundreds of interviews, a grand jury declared the entire story fraudulent. None of it actually happened. Brawley fled the state. A judge ordered Al Sharpton to pay for damages for accusing innocent men of rape. That should have been the end of Al Sharpton's career, yet just the opposite happened. Before he promoted Tawana Brawley's lies, Sharpton was best known as a small-time hustler, an FBI informant from Brooklyn, a man who'd once been James Brown's road manager. After he perpetuated the single most destructive racial hoax in memory, Al Sharpton got a promotion. He became a world-famous civil rights leader. He ran for president. He became a policy advisor to Barack Obama. According to visitor logs, Al Sharpton was invited to the Obama White House more than 80 times. He got his own show on MSNBC, which he still has. Sharpton has never apologized or even acknowledged the harm he did to this country by lying about Tawana Brawley. No one has forced him to. The lesson of Al Sharpton was clear to everyone watching. There are no penalties for hate hoaxes. There are only rewards. Not surprisingly, there have been many more since. The incident escalated dramatically after the 2016 election. The Muslim student in Louisiana who claimed she was assaulted by racists in Trump hats. The Muslim woman in San Diego who alleged the same. An anti-Asian attack in Minnesota, an anti-gay attack in California, a racial attack in Delaware, racist graffiti at the Air Force Academy, anti-Semitic threats phoned into Jewish community centers. All fake. Those and many, many more. The much-hyped epidemic of hate crimes you've heard so much about essentially is made up. The premise is absurd. America is not a hateful country. It's the most welcoming place on earth. That's why, even as our children learn from their teachers what a bigoted country this is, millions continue to stream in from Africa and Latin America for a better life here. It's why we've welcomed more refugees and immigrants than any nation in history. It's why we rescued a young Ilhan Omar from a refugee camp in Kenya. We are kind people. You see it in your own life. How many violent racists do you know personally? None, probably. That's because there aren't many in America. The left has to invent them. Stoking race hatred ensures continued power for the Democratic Party. Divided populations are easier to manipulate and rule. There would be no Democratic coalition without racial animosity. It's what holds their constituencies together. That's the point of identity politics. It's why they're forever reopening the wound. It's why Al Sharpton is still a revered figure among Democratic office holders. But the cost to the country has been high. Ask the kids from Covington Catholic. For the crime of having unfashionable political beliefs and skin color, a group of entirely innocent high school students came close to having their lives destroyed. That didn't happen by accident. The national media did it. They concocted a hate crime out of nothing. The Twitter mob then demanded that those boys be expelled from school and marked for life. Their parents were threatened. Their classmates were harassed. After 2 days, video surfaced proving that none of it was real. The mob moved on. But what if exculpatory video had not emerged? CNN panels would still be screaming for their blood. You sometimes hear people wonder why the media never seem to learn anything from moments like these, moments when they're exposed as corrupt and reckless. And so the answer to that question is very simple. It never occurs to them that they may be wrong or they might have something to learn. The media see themselves as teachers, not as students. If you ever tried to put a sleepy 4-year-old into a snowsuit before school, you know how journalists feel about the audience. It's frustrating when children don't understand or obey, but you've got to keep trying. That's how they feel. Listen as that oily media reporter kid from CNN explains that the Jussie Smollett hoax does not in any way reflect poorly on the people who promoted it.
Perhaps the questioning was not tough enough on Good Morning America, but ultimately this is not about the media or about politicians or activists or any of the people that might have been fooled. It's about Jussie.
Oh, yeah. It's about Jussie. It definitely has nothing to do with any of us in the media who uncritically repeated his lies night after night for political effect. It's Jussie's problem now. That's Nancy Pelosi's new position, too, by the way. Almost immediately after Smollett's story hit the news wires, the Speaker of the House denounced the racist and homophobic attack. Quote, "May we all commit to ending this hate once and for all." Pelosi has since deleted that tweet. She has not apologized for her own role in perpetuating that hate. Pelosi should apologize, and not simply because it's good manners. Hate hoaxes make ethnic groups fear and distrust each other. That's a dangerous thing to do in a country that's becoming more diverse by the day. The only way to prevent future Tawana Brawleys and Jussie Smolletts is for the people who've promoted these lies to acknowledge what they've done, ask for forgiveness for doing it, and pledge to stop judging others on the basis of racial stereotypes. We need to resolve the Jussie Smollett story. We can't just move on to the next thing and act like it never happened, which is their plan. Smollett himself made that point, actually, at the end of his interview on Good Morning America. Watch.
I still want to believe, with everything that has happened, that there's something called justice.
We've got that in common. Something called justice. We all want to believe in that.